Good morning, folks. How are you doing? Today is the 17th day of November, 2023. It is bright and early this morning. What time is it? It is 7:15 on a Friday. Happy Friday, folks. I thought I would share with you this. It's a series of photos from from a span of like a week and a half, 2 weeks. To do this one little project that usually, back before I was sick, would take me about a day to do. That's what I mistakenly thought it would take when I offered up this project to help out my neighbor who is in a wheelchair. Seems like a nice young man, works hard, comes home, and then he has to deal with navigating that to get back into his home to rest after a long evening of work. So I thought I finished this thing up yesterday. It doesn't look great. I am not a landscaping engineer. I was a carpenter and draftsman, builder of high-end woodwork and sets, stages, and even a project manager to some degree, and draftsman, these things. So this is what I did. This is the beginning of it. As you can see, this area appears too narrow for a wheelchair, so the guy coming back home, getting out of his truck, van, would be able to easily get up here. However, he has to ride with one wheel on and one wheel off, and then make this turn with one wheel off going up, or he'd come up here and just kind of heft himself up. It's ridiculous. Poor guy. This is after working his long shift. So I took it upon myself, and with some help and some things that were donated by the community, some materials donated by the community, decided to put together a little ramp for him. Not to take too much time on this, just to show you the process. This was my wheelbarrow. And this is down here in Florida and Tampa, in some areas we have this real sandy soil. It's not great for planting. However, it's pretty decent for leveling out pavers, as I discovered. Anyway, that was my wheelbarrow. And this is over the series. This is over the course of a week at least. And I had to move a bunch of it. Then a bunch more, and then a bunch more, and then we started leveling. I started leveling. And, eventually, this is what we ended up with. And this is the cleaned up version with... I've got this paver base that I'm using instead of sand in between. Not because it was a choice, but because I am not a fucking landscaping engineer. Got the wrong stuff. However, the paver base does hold up to water and wind and rain, and it's good. It solidifies the spacing in between the pavers, so it might work well. As you can see, we've got this leveled out as much as I could with the driveway. So you have a nice smooth transition here, and I ramped it up in the last two sets of pavers. So it's a nice easy transition, at least to here. This he's going to have to get. I'm sure you can buy things at Amazon or whatever. And this is the final product of it. It's raining a little bit. As you can see, the trim matches the paint on the mailbox. It's a nice little addition for him. I noticed this morning when I went out to walk Bo, instead of pulling in here and leaving space for his wheelchair to come in here and then fight through the grass and get up here, he'd actually backed in so he could open his door, which is why this is so long. He can open his door now when he backs in and set his wheelchair right here on this, hop right into his chair, close the door, spin the chair, and just roll back in with ease, or at least a lot more ease after a long day's work. So I told you I would let you know when that was done. It's done. I also told you a while ago, when it was announced, I found it on Norman Finkelstein's website. And then, of course, I found it in other places, that Elon Musk was going to use Starlink to help out the people of Gaza. And I suggested that was a bad idea. A really bad idea to promote it, Mr. Finkelstein. I said, even though Elon had said it's only going to be used to help aid agencies bringing in assistance and aid to the people of Gaza and not to help Hamas, I said, don't you understand that that's exactly who they want to fucking target? The whole purpose of this now is to undermine the civilian infrastructure of Gaza. That is why they're attacking hospitals. They're telling you, Bibi Netanyahu's made they've come up with a new fucking line of propaganda, and that was that the hostages were being held under. We had reason to believe. They never mentioned the hospitals when they were the hostages under the hospitals or in the hospitals. What they're doing is they're transitioning from, remember that video, in the last video we talked about, and I showed you that brief little video with the whole fucking tunnel network and, shooting ranges and ballet fucking dance fucking recital halls and shit. Supposedly all Hamas and underneath the hospital. Of course they didn't find that. And the stupid shit that they did find could have easily been brought in by the fucking IDF and the IDF's fucking propagandists. Well, they had to transition the story. Now the story is no longer that their main goddamn offices were under the fucking hospital. No, now the story is they had reason to believe hostages were being held at the hospital. Which is odd because at first they wanted permission to bomb the hospital, like they had bombed the other hospitals. Had they thought that there were hostages there, are we back to the Hannibal directive? Ooh, no one's talking about that anymore, oddly enough. So they're changing the fucking story, they're changing the narrative, and Bibi comes out, and that's the new fucking spin. But he also made a point, and he's made the point before, that their new goal is to continue this to the point where Palestinians in Gaza will not be able to commit any kind of attack on Israeli citizens like they did on the 7th. Well, that's a wild fucking goal. Because it doesn't take a whole lot to put that kind of shit together. You don't have to have Hamas or any government to do that, in fact. So what are they saying? Well, they're saying they want total, absolute control over Gaza. They want to take Gaza. And if that means killing more civilians and destroying more civilian infrastructure, that's part of the plan. I'm going to show you that's the plan. I'm going to show you that's the plan. They got a plan from fucking David BetrayUs, believe it or not. Where you go in, you destroy, you occupy, and then you rebuild. You remake it in the way in under your fucking view, under your idea of how their country should be. This is exactly what they're talking about doing with Gaza. But back to the point of Elon Musk and Starlink. There's an interesting article. I hope this is not too glitchy. I'll I'll take these things out. I'll favorite them and take them out as we go. Back to Elon Musk and Starlink. This is an article from 2 days ago. Unmasking Hamas. Israeli citizens lead efforts to expose terrorism funding. Volunteer tech workers have uncovered terrorist entities that mask their fundraising with banners of charity and education and other humanitarian goals. Meaning what? This is what they mean. They are looking to sanction, but also undermine agencies operating inside Gaza that are helping with civilian infrastructure. Because remember, their plan is to decimate civilian infrastructure and then once they occupy it, to rebuild it in their model, thus making the Palestinians subservient to them. They don't want them with their own fucking education systems and healthcare systems and governmental systems. Israel wants to have that control. So yes, there'll be sanctions on these, but there'll also be other attacks on not only the humanitarian organizations operating inside Gaza with nothing to do with Hamas, but on those people who fund them. Volunteer tech workers have uncovered this. That is exactly what Starlink is being put in place or being given to Gazans to use. That is why. They want to give those Elon Musk owned and operated Starlink fucking communication systems to the very critical infrastructure organizations that they wish to target so that they can find out who is contacting them from outside the country and who is helping fund civilian infrastructure in Gaza. So that we can target them, we can if they're in the United States, sick the IRS on them, we can have nice little conversations with them, sit down and talk to them and say, we really don't want to keep doing this. So they can undermine those things. That's what this is talking about. Just wanted to toss that out there. I've also talked about, over the course of this process, I've said to you, Bibi Netanyahu is not going to survive this. He's politically is not going to survive this. And I've also mentioned the fact that a lot of people, some within his cabinet, many from within the Knesset, and of course the Israeli population in general, they understand the political nature of this. The longer this goes on, the longer Bibi Netanyahu pushes back, holds off the wolves at the gate. He is done. He is done. And everyone in Israel knows it. As long as this continues, he can stay in power. But as soon as it's over, he's done. Now, I've said that for weeks now. Let's take a look at what's going on in Israel. Survey: Netanyahu will be heavily defeated were elections held today. And Gantz soars in popularity. Excuse me. Pardon me. A Channel 12 survey finds that Benjamin Netanyahu-led coalition won 64 seats last November's election, would crash to just 45 seats in the 120-strong Knesset if they were held today. The anti-Netanyahu so-called change parties would soar to 70 seats, with the Hadash-Tal alliance winning the other 5. Benny Gantz's National Unity Party would win 36 seats, the survey found, more than double the 17 for Netanyahu's Likud. Likud would be out of power, so would Bibi Netanyahu. We've been talking about this. Not only that, but then the leaders of the IDF would also be out of jobs. They have to hold on to this. They have no choice but to continue this fucking war. Because the minute it's over, so are they. The channel acknowledged that it was unusual to take an election survey during a war. At the same time, it noted that usually during wars, prime ministers got a popularity boost, while this survey showed the exact opposite. The survey gives the party seats as follows, and you can read them there for yourself. How many they have, the survey said what they would have, and versus how many they currently have. The currently have number is in parentheses. Here's an important one. Netanyahu's Likud party would only win 17 seats, whereas they have 32 now. And Gantz's National Unity Party would triple its number. It would have 36 seats, whereas it only has 12 now. The survey was conducted yesterday among 502 respondents by pollster Monogeva and Midgam, and it has a 4.4% margin of error. Were former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett's to return to politics as the head of the party, National Unity would win 25 seats, Likud 17, Bennett 17, and Yesh Atid 14, the survey found. Asked who their favorite prime minister, or who was their favored prime minister, respondents referred to Gantz, preferred Gantz to Netanyahu by 41 to 25%. So, Bibi's gone once this ends. I'm going to favorite this. It's already favored. I don't know when I favored it. Oh, I favored it yesterday, so that's fine. Bibi's gone. There's no question about that. Lapid called on Netanyahu to quit, says the government isn't functioning during the war. Likud slammed remarks, accusing opposition leader of seeking government that will establish Palestinian state. There's already a Palestinian state. Yesh Atid clarifies he calls for a new prime minister, not a ruling party. So he doesn't want Likud out, he wants Bibi out. Opposition leader Yair Lapid on Wednesday called on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to resign over what he called the government's poor handling of the war against Hamas. Netanyahu needs to go now during the fighting, Atid told Channel 12 News. The first time he openly called for the premier's ouster since the beginning of the war. This will not be the last guy doing that. Quote, "We will sit in government under another candidate from Likud." The implication being, of course, he won't with Bibi. He said, claiming that he was in discussions with leaders of the ruling party on the subject. Quote, "There are many people there who understand this country is going to a bad place." Let me stop for a second. This is what I've been saying. They understand that this total war on Gaza now, because of their fuck up, and because they know where they're going to go once it's over, this total war on fucking Gaza being run by the heads of the IDF, who are going to be gone, the heads of Likud, who are going to be gone, and of course Bibi Netanyahu. It's political, and they know it's political. And they know it's unwinnable. I'm going to show you in a second what their plan was. They've adopted this David BetrayUs bullshit fucking plan, and they can't. It's undoable, especially as on the horizon, dark clouds are rising. And the longer this goes on, and the more bullshit they come out with, and the more obvious they make it that they are deliberately targeting infrastructure inside Gaza, the darker those clouds get. The rest of the world, including France, including the Middle East, including the European Union, the rest of the world is not going to sit idly by while a handful of men try to retain power by killing 1 million fucking Palestinians. It's not going to happen. It's just not. Period. And this is harming the state of Israel. These men don't care. They will, just like fucking Zelensky in Ukraine, Bibi Netanyahu will fight to the last Israeli. By the way, coincidentally or not, I don't know that Zelensky makes it to the fucking new year. Now, I've said before, I don't think Bibi will, and I still don't. You know, I had said maybe a week ago that I don't think he's in the last 2 weeks, and he might not. The more people start talking like this, all they need is one more fucking major problem. One more fucking major revelation. And of course, the IDF killing more civilians, more Israeli civilians than Hamas did on October 7th. That might just very well be it. This government isn't functioning, he continued. We need change. Netanyahu cannot continue to be prime minister. We cannot allow ourselves to conduct a prolonged campaign with a minister that the public just has no faith in. Lapid said he was ready to create a national reconstruction government led by Likud with ultra-Orthodox parties, Avigdor Lieberman's Yisrael Bettinu and Benny Gatz's National Unity, but stressed that Netanyahu cannot lead it. Lapid did not join the war cabinet, established 6 days after Hamas's October 7th onslaught along Gantz, claiming it would not be able to function. He had preconditioned his joining the government on the ousting of far-right ministers, blah, 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 blah. Many Israelis have accused the government of an inept, chaotic response to the crisis, including the slow reaction of the army to terrorist invasions, leaving civilians to defend themselves for hours, shortages of military equipment during the reservist call-up, and a sluggish civil response in support of those displaced by the fighting. The lack of action has prompted civil society groups to fill in the gaps left by what they see as an ineffectual state response. Now, I'll post links to all of this stuff down below, but I have to get rid of it now so that it's not screwing up my thing. This is from The Atlantic, and this is an interesting article. Again, this is current. This is November 16th, 2023. Why the most hated man in Israel might just stay in power. This is by Graham Wood. Now, I know a lot of people out there, you know, they wonder whether or not even this would be enough to unseat someone who's deeply rooted in Israeli politics, like Bibi Netanyahu is. And that's a good question, as asked by The Atlantic. They seem to think he might stay in power. I don't think he will. But let me read this for you real quick, this little snippet from it here real quick. In his own comments, Netanyahu has been bellicose yet strategic. When he stated recently that he intended for Israel to have security responsibility for Gaza, quote, for an indefinite period, end quote, and that the Palestinian Authority would not be part of the future agreement, he was basically telling Israelis that the war would not be in vain, that it would not reach an end state from which a new attack could grow. And he was rebuffing the Biden administration's suggestions that Israel planned for an exit from Gaza. Yet, compared with the threat of planetary erasure, his phrasing was downright diplomatic. It's a rare skill to be able to appease or even please madmen while not sounding mad oneself. Whatever Netanyahu's faults, and they include presiding over the biggest debacle in Israeli history, he can speak with precision, knitting and unknitting coalitions, and manage foreign affairs. What are we talking about here? That's what I told you. When he's promising the Israelis, don't get rid of me, I'm going to give you what you've been asking for all these decades, and that is Gaza. Because that is the only possible way that they could reach an end state from which a new attack could not grow. That is the only possible way to erase Gaza from existence, to wipe it off the map. Gaza is Palestine. He is promising to wipe Palestine off the map once and for all, to make up for their failures. And he thinks, in the end, that will keep him in place. I have said that over and over and over. again. Now, it's interesting. I heard Biden just yesterday repeating that same sentiment. This is going to continue until there is no possibility that Gaza could commit another attack like October 7th, and there's only one way to do that. There's only one way to do that. But of course, as I've shown you, the Biden administration is under a lot of pressure. And that stupid staged, bought and paid for March for Israel thing where they only got 10,000 fucking people. Turns out it was probably closer to 20 or 25,000 people. They're saying it was 300,000. I'm surprised they didn't say 6 million, but they said it was 300,000. It's not 300,000. But that's not going to help. And they can do everything in their power to try to influence their talking heads on the nightly news shows, the 5 fucking companies that own all the news most people, the normies, see in this country. But the reality is, the people who work for them, the people who are in front of those cameras, the people who are writing for them, they're striking out on their own. They're seeing. Again, it's like what happened with Egypt. The third Clinton administration under Barack Obama, with Hillary Clinton at the helm, they tried their best to keep Mubarak in power. They tried their best to keep the mainstream media from talking about it. But they kept looking across the fucking fence and seeing all the attention Al Jazeera was getting, covering what was happening, and they wanted a piece of the action. They didn't want to be known as a straight, pure propaganda fucking outlet because it would hurt their bottom line. So they started covering it. In the end, Hillary had to fucking go and talk to her family friend and tell him he needed to get the fuck out. And that's exactly what happened. And that's what's going to happen here. Bibi said that they've not been successful in minimizing Gaza's civilian casualties. That's because they're bombing them. Israeli leader says the army's trying to get Gazan civilians out of harm's way by telling them to leave their fucking homes. Jump on the Nakba 2.0 train and you'll be fine. But if you stay in your home, if you stay in your fucking country, you're going to get bombed. That's literally what he's fucking telling people. And of course, what are we doing? This is from The Nation. The U.S. and Israel think they can decide Gaza's future, and here's why they're wrong. Bibi and Netanyahu are clinging to an old imperial model about what to do with Gaza, but their plans are doomed to fail. This is that old imperial model. This was published November 14th, 2023. It's written by someone named David for the Times of Israel. Where do we go from here? Well, there's an answer. Clear, hold, and build. And that is the BetrayUs model. Well, it's attributed to David BetrayUs. BetrayUs. It's attributed to David BetrayUs. But it really isn't. It's older than that. It's old as fucking warfare itself. With a protracted war ahead, Israel has a vested interest in quickly rebuilding and establishing civilian control in Gaza. The war is far from over. The hostages have not been freed. Of course the hostages haven't been freed because they're the ones who give the fucking justification for bombing places and attacking things like civilian infrastructure and hospitals. Civilians in Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel are in mortal danger. Perhaps it's too soon to ask, but where do we go from here? However, From day one of Israel's response to Hamas's attack on Israeli civilians, people have questioned the wisdom of invading Gaza without a clear exit strategy. Engaging a coalition of regional and international partners in building and implementing the strategy for what happens the day after cannot wait until the day after. According to pronouncements made by Israeli government officials, including the Prime Minister, we can expect this war to go on for months, maybe a year or more, until people forget and are pissed off, forget the emotion of being pissed off at their fucking leadership for failing in such a historic way. What happens to more than 2 million Palestinian civilians while Israel conducts a months-long, a years-long military operation in Gaza to root out Hamas is a mystery to me. It isn't to me. Either get out or we'll blow you, we'll kill you. Your fucking leader with the big ears told you so. The Dumbo ears told you so. I am doubtful that any foreign government or coalition of governments will be willing to take responsibility for the well-being of civilian populations under those circumstances. He also assumes they'll be fucking kicked out of their country. Another fucking Nakba. I hope that someone in the Israeli government has a plan. Someone does. Cheap labor. This is what I wanted to read you. In 2006, U.S. Army Handbook on Counterinsurgency Operations, General David BetrayUs, former commander of U.S. forces in Iraq, explained the objectives of his clear, hold, build counterinsurgency strategy. Quote, create a secure environment, establish government control over an area, gain the support of the populace, end quote. BetrayUs argues that a strategy that can yield stability, quote, requires not just the neutralization of armed combatants, but securing vital infrastructure, improving essential services, establishing political apparatus, and even building and improving schools and hospitals and post offices and electric transfer stations and water. This is what they're doing. This is what they've come up with. I'm going to favorite these for you so I can post links. But this system is not going to work. It's not going to work in fucking Gaza. It didn't work in fucking Iraq. We were told to get the fuck out in 2011. We had to go back and bomb some more because we didn't want their people taking over control of their country again. Damn sure didn't work in Afghanistan. Their fucking heroin production has dropped down to 0% of the world's heroin output, or the world's heroin. You can look that up yourself. It doesn't work. The theory doesn't work. The plan, clear, hold, and rebuild, doesn't work. Clear, meaning destroying civilian infrastructure. Hold, meaning occupy it. The brutal occupying force. Sometimes, in order to deal with the insurgency, you have to bring in what's called the Salvador option. David BetrayUs is big on that. Which is death squads. And then, of course, you have to rebuild. You have to rebuild in order to make people feel not normalize the invaders, but make them feel like at least they're getting something out of it because the shit was so bad under the last fucking government they had. In this case, Hamas. That is their plan. That is their long-term strategy. And that, those three men right there pictured in front of you think will save Bibi Netanyahu's fucking job. Will save Likud's position in the forefront of Israeli politics and foreign policy. Will save the Zionist dream of wiping Palestine off the fucking map. And it's not going to work. Again, this is from The Nation. Israel's relentless bombardment of Gaza shows no sign of stopping. But the United States is already thinking about what should happen when the bloodshed ends. Speaking to reporters last week, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken suggested that the territory's governance should be unified with the West Bank and laid out a series of edits for the future of Palestine. Well, Bibi says no to that. And they wanted to bring in the leadership in the West Bank because they're bought and paid for. They're house Muslims, so to speak. Gaza cannot continue to be run by Hamas, said Blinken. Who says? It's also clear that Israel cannot occupy Gaza, and he's right about that. It is imperative that the Palestinian people be central to the governance of Gaza and the West Bank. That's a big fucking difference between what that statement was a week ago and what Bibi Netanyahu says now. He won't allow fucking the Palestinians to think they run Gaza. He wants it all. Blinken's parameters were defied days later by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who declared IDF forces will remain in control of this strip and made clear that he will not allow the Palestinian Authority to play a role there. Netanyahu then told Fox News that Israel does not seek to occupy Gaza, though, given the facts on the ground, it's hard to know how Israel defines occupation. The back and forth over what comes next in Gaza has prompted headlines like this one from NBC. The gap between Biden administration and Netanyahu government over Gaza's future is widening. They are losing their fucking sugar daddy. Understand this. When the Palestinian Authority comes in and takes over, and Hamas is done with, and they go, and they start to rebuild themselves, the war's over. What happens then? The only way to ensure that it continues, that he stays in power indefinitely, is to take the position where there can't be a single Palestinian who would ever throw a rock over a fence. I promise you that. Because he fucked up so bad on October the 7th. Because he knows the people of Israel know he fucked up so bad on October the 7th. That he is gone when it is over. You bring in the Palestinian Authority, it is over. The war is done. And Bibi Netanyahu and Likud and the IDF fucking generals, who all failed on October the 7th, I know you guys don't like hearing that, but who all failed on October the 7th are fucking gone. Will there be ultra-Zionists taking their place? Probably not. Not if the polls... If that poll from Channel 12 in Israel was even somewhat accurate, 4.4%, either way, if that poll was accurate, which there's no reason to believe it isn't, no, ultra-Zionists will not be brought in, which means their dream, the Zionist dream of wiping Palestine off the map once and for all, will be put on the back burner until maybe 10 more years, 7 more years, 12 more years, however long it is. That's a major setback for the fucking Zionists all around the fucking world. Bibi would be out of office, vote of no confidence. He has, one of the articles that I looked at said he had 4% of the people in fucking Israel. And you can go look at the articles and read them yourself and you'll find what I'm talking about. 4% of the people in a poll, people in Israel, across Israel, 4% approved of how he handled what happened on October the 7th and what's going on now. 4%. And he was at 27% approval rating before this whole thing started, which of course is tanked. He's done. And it's not like he's done and he's going back to fucking what's his fucking place? What's Trump's place over in fucking Belago, whatever the fuck his place with the golden toilet. That's not what done means to Bibi Netanyahu. What's done to Bibi Netanyahu means those criminal charges that are kind of sitting in a holding pattern, flying around in the fucking skies over the airport. They get landing approval. They get a runway. He's going to have to leave Israel. And of course he will. I've said this before. Both of them are going to be gone. Zelensky's going to be gone and Bibi's going to be gone. Zelensky's going to be gone the hard way. Because Zelensky serves no one's purpose. No one's purpose. He's a puppet. He's a bad comedic actor. He's a cokehead. And he's insufferable now. And people are having to tolerate his little ass. But shit's to the point now where they're saying their military is like looking at him going, this guy's the real problem here. We're going to get rid of him and cut some fucking deal. And that'll be the end of that and put an end to this goddamn war because we don't like being blown up by the fucking Russians. And we're losing anyway and there's no way to win it. When they get rid of Zelensky, it's going to be very painful for him. Bibi's not going to suffer that fate. Bibi has made people money. A lot of money. Bibi has close friends who share his worldview outside the country. He will be whisked away in the middle of the night someplace, probably once he realizes that his clear hold and rebuild fucking strategy isn't going to work and could never fucking work. And he will be one of those leaders who ends up fleeing the country with suitcases full of cash and artwork. Leaving the people of Israel to pick up the pieces. That's not just my opinion, that's also the opinion of this thing from The Nation. The back and forth over what comes next has prompted headlines like this one, I told you that. But there's a glaringly absent party in the conversations, the Palestinian people themselves. No one seems particularly interested in what they might have to say about the future of their land. Unfortunately, this is nothing new. Palestinians have long been accustomed to outsiders dictating what their land should look like and how it should be ruled. Britain's 1917 Balfour Proclamation promised a Jewish homeland in Palestine. The League of Nations mandate authorized British rule there. And in 1947, UN partition plan called for the country to be divided into two. In more recent years, Donald Trump's deal of the century reimagined Palestine as an archipelago. I don't know what the fuck that is, of townships and factories connected via tunnels to ensure that the sight of Palestinians would not disturb Israelis living above. Jesus. Today, Netanyahu and Blinken's designs for Gaza seem particularly egregious, with the former killing over 11,000 people there using weapons supplied by the government of the latter. A government that has steadfastly refused to call for a ceasefire has labeled the few American politicians who have done so as repugnant and has never held Netanyahu or his extremist coalition to account. That's going to change, either for defying U.S. policy or blatantly violating international law, both before and after Hamas's attack on October the 7th. But aside from all the audacity, these ideas are poorly thought out and are likely to fail. And they will fail, because they always fail. Everywhere we try to implement this policy of ours, to clear, to hold, which means to occupy. To clear means shock and awe, and destroy civilian infrastructure. To hold is to occupy brutally, and sometimes using the Salvador option, and then to rebuild using American fucking contractors to come in and cut corners on this and cut corners on that, but also to rebuild their system privatizing central banks, things like that. Rebuild the system in a Western ideology-friendly manner. It's not going to work. It hasn't worked. It's not going to work. And that's what fucking Bibi and his folks are trying to hang on to, trying to hold on to. Bibi, I told you before, Bibi, they think that if they can finally be the ones who hand over Gaza and finally wipe Palestine off the map and give all of Palestine to fucking Israel, then that will be enough to satiate the Israeli public. They could hand over, and my opinion is, first of all, taking the Palestinian resistance out of it, my opinion is this. They could hand over all of fucking Lebanon, all of fucking Jordan, all of fucking Palestine to these glorious Israelis and go, see, it's greater Israel. I promised you. It's the word of God, which, by the way, is what Netanyahu means. Given by God, I think, is closer. I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. Because everyone in fucking Israel knows why he's doing it. He's not... I don't want this to come across the wrong way and come across as anti-Semitic. It's not, certainly. Or a gross generalization. But by and large, per capita, Jews aren't stupid people. They're not. They see through this. They understand what he's doing. They understand that he's overcompensating because he is desperately afraid of just becoming little people. I've said this so many times, I'll say it one more time. A quote from fucking Blade Runner. Hey, listen, you're either cop or you're little people. You're either prime minister or you're not. And when you're not, you have to face consequences, like criminal fucking charges that are pending, circling the airport. Bibi Netanyahu does not survive this. There is no metric by which he does. And word is seeping out throughout the Israeli population. Yeah, they can push all the dumb beheaded babies bullshits. They can push all the fucking rape fucking stories, the IDF and Mossad and fucking Hasbara and fucking... they can all push the fucking bullshit to American fucking civilians and American population. And a percentage of them are going to believe that stupid shit. But it's a much higher percentage in the United States of America than it is in Israel. And that's a fucking fact. Something's going to come out. Something's going to be done. They're finally going to come to the understanding that the Palestinian people, the ones who were there, are not terrorists, but they are also not cowards. And they are not going to behave like good little Muslims. Simply because Bibi Netanyahu is there and the all-powerful IDF. The numbers are adding up. IDF soldiers are dying. Not anywhere near as fast as fucking Palestinian civilians and kids. This is not going to be tolerated for much longer. People will look at the fact that Blinken and Biden said, okay, let's bring in the Palestinian Authority, do away with fucking Hamas. And for some reason, Bibi said, hell fucking no. Palestinian Authority didn't have anything to do with fucking attacking people on October 7th, and they never would because they're in bed with Israel and Israeli businesses. They're sellouts. Why not? What's wrong with that? Even that October 13th white paper that was written had three options. The second option was bring in fucking the Palestinian Authority. which of course the people of Palestine don't want. But so the people of Israel are going to look at things like that and say, why is he doing this? Well, we know why he's doing it. Because the longer this war goes on, the more time he has in office and the more time the Israeli people have to forget what he was responsible for. The embarrassment, the fear, the bloodshed, and the pain of October the 7th. Consequently, the more time this goes on, the longer this drags out, the more economic pain is imposed on Israel by nations outside the country, even though the United States says, oh, you're not going to sanction. It doesn't matter. They're cutting fucking deals. They're sending ambassadors home. The people of Israel and the Jews outside Israel don't want to be considered pariahs. All because of Bibi Netanyahu trying to hang on to his fucking job. It's a fact. I still stand by the fact that he's not going to be prime minister in the beginning of 2024. Hell, he might not make it to the week. Thank you for your time.